Bucknutters, welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Monday, July 10th, 2017. I am Dave Biddle, and I'm very happy to be joined by Alex Gleitman. Alex, I've been gone for a couple weeks. Bring me up to speed, bring the listeners up to speed. What is the latest on Ohio State football recruiting? What do we need to know? Who might be next to join this fantastic 2018 class for the Buckeyes?
Yeah, well, right now it's kind of a little bit quiet on the recruiting front. You obviously had the opening a couple weeks ago. And Ohio State recruits were all over the place, whether it be the commits, the targets. There was a ton of them there. Most of them performed pretty well. But now, as you said, it's hunting season for Urban Meyer and his staff coming up. They have their last camp of the year, Friday Night Lights, coming up on Friday, July 21st. So that will be 1 week from this coming Friday. It's going to be a star-studded lineup once again. But I think the Buckeyes could add a commitment or two or three or four potentially that night. But I think you got to look first at July 17th, the announcement date of tight end Jeremy Ruckert from Lindenhurst, New York, out in Long Island. Jeremy's deciding between Ohio State, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Notre Dame. And, I've had him pegged to Ohio State since, I guess it was like early last September when I went out to the school and I got to spend time with Jeremy and his coach. And it's really just been Ohio State leading the charge with him. No matter who else was up there, whether it was Alabama, whether it was Michigan, whether there was, at one time Penn State was in the mix, and there was a number of other schools in the mix there for Jeremy. But the one constant has been Ohio State. They've done a great job building a relationship from the start, and I think the Buckeyes are going to be the pick over the Wolverines, who will come in second in that one on July 17th at 3 p.m. when Jeremy, I believe, is going to be releasing a video done by Bleacher Report to announce his decision.
I know you did a piece on this. I saw Miami. I'm looking at the 24/7 Sports Composite team recruiting rankings right now. Miami has edged Ohio State for the top spot for the time being, but they have 19 commitments. Ohio State has 14. Average rating, Miami 91.8. Average rating for Ohio State 95.3, which is by far the highest in the country. Are all signs, in your opinion, still pointing to the Buckeyes winning the mythical national championship in recruiting this year?
Yeah, I think so. I think Alabama, I don't know if they're in on a lot of guys who are going to decide late, or they're just have a smaller class and being more selective. I don't know what the deal is with Alabama. They're definitely not starting as fast as they normally are. I think they're sitting around 51 or something right now. But it looks like this is going to be the first year since Alabama's had the recruiting title 2011 through the 2017 class, and I think this is going to be the first year that they're unseeded. I think it's going to be Ohio State. The last school to have the number one recruiting ranking, I believe, was 2010 in Florida, and their head coach, the guy who recruited that class, was Urban Meyer. So I think Urban Meyer is once again going to take back that number one crown. And as you said, I mean, some schools have more recruits than Ohio State, and a lower ranking. Miami's the only one that has a higher ranking. And, you add Jeremy Ruckert, Ohio State will go back to number one. And then you talk about names like Cameron Babb and LaChristian Smith and Jackson Carman and some of the other guys they're in on. The Tyreek Smith, the Jason Owes, the Micah Parsons. Obviously, they're not going to maybe get all of these guys. Anthony Cook, Tyson Campbell, I could go on and on. They're not going to get all of them. But if they get a good percentage of them, which I think that they could, this class not only could be number one in the country this year, but I think it could be the best class of all time, potentially, depending on how the chips fall, not only for total score, but also for average per player rating, which would unseat last year's 2017 class, which was outstanding as well.
Obviously a long way till signing day, but right now it seems like Michigan is struggling on the recruiting front for their standards. I mean, Harbaugh's first class, he basically skipped a class. He only had like a month to put it together, but the 2015 class was bad. I don't really put that on Harbaugh, though. He had about a month to put it together. His two classes so far have been good classes. They've both been top 10 classes when he's had like time to put together. And they'll probably still finish the top 10 class if I had to guess. But right now, Michigan is ranked 19th in the country in the 24/7 Sports Composite. They're behind schools like Kentucky and Maryland. They only have 10 commitments. They don't have any five-star commitments. Just forecast it a little bit. Where do you think they're going to end up roughly? Are they in on some five-star recruits? Do you feel like Michigan is struggling right now? Just give us the latest on the team up north's recruiting efforts.
I don't think they're struggling at all. I mean, I think, they have some pretty good pieces in their class. I think that, Ohio State's brand is kind of a little bit more advanced as far as under their new coach than Michigan is. The proof is in the pudding. And while Michigan's had 2 pretty good years under Jim Harbaugh at this point, I'm not saying that Michigan's not back. They're certainly Michigan's football is definitely in a much better place than it has been, under Brady Hoke, Rich Rodriguez, et cetera, really since, Lloyd Carr left, like, I would say early 2000s. It's been in the best place since then, but I think people still, you still have to prove that you're an elite in college football to be able to start, from start to finish, go hard and fast. And it even took Urban Meyer some time. I remember a couple cycles ago, people were getting impatient. The Buckeyes would only have X amount of recruits entering June or whatever it may be. And I think Michigan's in a similar spot to that. And so I think Michigan's definitely going to finish with a top 10 class. I know there's a bunch of guys on their board still that they're going for, and Harbaugh has, at least in his first, 2-3 years, 2-3 cycles, I should say, doing recruiting, has kind of finished late with some targets that end up deciding a little bit later in the process. And so I think there's nothing, if you're a Michigan fan, I don't think there's anything to worry about when it comes to their recruiting efforts right now. They're number 19 in the country, and again, I think they're definitely going to finish with the top 10 class. I would probably put pretty good money on that if that's something you could bet on.
Switching gears to basketball, Ohio State finishes with the number 1 recruiting class in the Big Ten, the 2017 class. It's funny how this ended up coming together. For a while, it was just Caleb Wesson and Braxton Beverly, and then Kyle Young joined the fold, and that was going to be, I think, like the 3rd or 4th best class in the Big Ten. And you remove Braxton Beverly from that, they drop back to 8th or something like that, and then they add Musa Jallow on Friday. All of a sudden, Alex, they edged Purdue for the number 1 recruiting class in the Big Ten for the 2017 class, and still not an elite class. I mean, I still think they're ranked like 25th nationally, but the best class in the Big Ten. There's been so much doom and gloom around the basketball program. I don't feel like we're making enough of this, that this is a pretty damn good start. I mean, the number 1 recruiting class in the Big Ten, that's a good way for Chris Holtman to get things going. And I know he inherited Caleb Wesson, who's the best of the 3, but still, this is a really good way to start for Chris Holtman.
Yeah, definitely a good way to start. I mean, there's been some, I guess, unfortunate things to happen to the 2018 class. Darius Baisley obviously decommitted when Mata was still the coach, and now he just committed to Syracuse recently. And then Kyle Ahrens is, he decommitted once Mata got fired. Another new staff is kind of deciding whether they want to pursue him or not. And then Dane Goodwin, I think, was kind of a bigger loss, a guy who stayed committed, and then once the decision was made, met Holtman, met his staff, visited Villanova, visited Notre Dame, decided Notre Dame was the best place for him. So those were kind of 3 pretty big blows for the program on the recruiting trail. But as you said, you have Caleb Wesson, who I think is actually very underrated by fans, not only Ohio State fans, but, just fans across the country. The kid committed early. There hasn't been a ton of hype and whatever about him, but I know people inside the Schottenstein Center are under the Mata regime and now under the new staff are really excited about Caleb Wesson. Getting Kyle Young was absolutely huge. It's a guy they missed on the first time around. Chris Holtman was able to get him to commit to Butler when the kid had offers from, wherever, Michigan State, Florida, Ohio State, Wisconsin, et cetera, et cetera. And now is able to bring him over to Ohio State with him. He's a guy who can, at least see minutes on the floor this year. Absolutely. And then, you're able to get Musa Jallow, who is kind of, other than shooting the basketball, he's really good at everything. He's not great at anything, but he's good at defending. He's good at, driving. He's good at getting his teammates involved. He's a high effort, high energy guy. And he can rebound and he can play multiple positions. So you're talking about 3 guys. Again, as you said, none of them I don't think are truly elite alpha type guys like a D'Angelo Russell, like a, Mike Conley or Greg Oden or an Evan Turner by the time he finishes his career that are going to take over games and single-handedly bring Ohio State basketball back to the top. That said, though, they're really nice pieces to not only add for, as Chris Holtman's trying to build the program, but for this year's roster. And I don't think the staff is done yet. As I've heard, there's about 5 or 6 other names that they're looking at, especially at the guard position where they're a little thinner to try to add to this 2017 roster.
That's great. I think they need to, even if it's somebody just to get in there if they have like extreme foul trouble or, whatever, like injuries or whatever, they need to add a couple other warm bodies. I like even though it's a small roster, I like the talent on this roster, and getting Musa Jallow not only to commit but to reclassify to 2017 was huge. I want to leave you with this. clear that up for me. So he obviously reclassified to 2017, meaning he graduated high school. So he was just going to, if he didn't reclassify to 2017, was he just going to play for his high school team this year, even though he had graduated? Like, how does that work?
Well, it's different for kind of every kid. Like at a prep school where you could be there for 5 years and, kind of reclassify down, it would work differently than Musa, who's at a public school. I think what Musa did was take care of everything academically that he needed to do from a core curriculum standpoint and a test score standpoint to be able to not only graduate graduate high school early, but also to be able to clear the NCAA clearinghouse and be eligible to play this year immediately. Now, if he stayed, he wouldn't just be able to stay at his public school, not take classes and play basketball. That's not how it works. He'd have to, he wouldn't have had to, there's a reason he's reporting August 15th. I'm sure things have to clear through the NCAA, but I'm sure he also has to take, maybe potentially a number of, summer courses or things like that to be able to, officially get the stamp of approval. So he probably wouldn't have rushed everything. I know this is something Musa said he's been working on for a while as far as, making sure he had the opportunity to do this, but he wouldn't have rushed everything, or he would have just taken electives or whatever he needed to take to be a student at his school, whatever the minimum was, and continue to play basketball.
Okay, thank you. I had wondered, like, I'm thrilled he's able to reclassify to 2017, but I'm like, wait a minute, how at the last minute was he able to just reclassify to 2017? Was he just going to just, like I said, just maybe take a couple of classes here and there, maybe take phys ed like a couple different times, take all these, courses that really aren't academic classes as a senior, just kind of enjoy himself. So, hey, it's worked out well for the Buckeyes, and I'm glad you were able to explain that.
Yeah, and every kid is different. As I said, there's some kids that they were originally 2017, and then maybe they took eighth grade again in a prep school so that they can, be 28, so that they can, be 2018, and then they decide, there's an opportunity to come back into that 2017 class later on, and I already finished everything I needed to take care of. There's just a number of different things that these kids could do depending on where they are. Some of it's probably a little sketchy. I don't think that's the case with Musa at all, having jumped up a class. But, sometimes kids jump back a class, and then maybe they'll jump up a class. And it's kind of a little crazy. It's certainly not the way it works, usually on the football end, and which makes sense because, bodies aren't as mature and things like that. For a junior to all of a sudden, jump and want to jump right into college football without that extra year of maturation on his body. But, with basketball, there's a number of different ways depending on public school, private school, prep school, et cetera, that these kids could do it. So, there's a couple other guys that, I don't want to, I was asked not to mention any specific names, but we talked about Eric Ayala in the past, and there's a couple other guys who are thinking about possibly reclassing to 2017 that Ohio State is in the mix for and is trying to add to the roster. So look out for a couple of these other different scenarios over the next couple months.
Well, that's fantastic news. Yeah, in football, when guys want to get that extra year, they usually, quote-unquote, redshirt in eighth grade. You take eighth grade twice if you haven't already, because if you do it in high school, then you lose a year of eligibility. If you do it in eighth grade, you can just, play when you're a 19-year-old senior if you want to. I know a lot of people do that, including here in the state of Ohio. Great stuff out of Alex Gleitman. He is Ohio State graduate. He's in New York City right now, though. We're going to try and get him back to Columbus one day to live here, but he loves living in New York City, and we love having him on the Bucknuts Morning 5 and on Bucknuts in general. Thank you very much, Alex, and thanks to all the listeners out there for tuning into the show. I appreciate it. Hope you have a great day. Let's hear some Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.